Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Happy Friday afternoon. A gorgeous day out here in the beautiful city of Milwaukee. Thank you so much for tuning in to another jam-packed episode of the Brew City Lounge. As always, I am your host, Brandon. You can go ahead and follow me on Twitter at Wisco_Brandon. And please do not forget to follow the show on Twitter, on Facebook, on YouTube at Brew City Pod. As always, I'm very excited to have you guys tuning in. If you are on the live stream, good afternoon. I hope you're having a phenomenal day. If you are listening on your smart device, wherever you may get your podcasts, and please don't forget, we are available wherever you get your podcasts, Apple, Google, Spotify, and so much more. It's an absolute honor and privilege to be here to be talking about our favorite teams with you. Of course, I am talking about those Game 7 Milwaukee Bucks and those Milwaukee Brewers. Lots to talk about, lots to break down. We'll break down all the good stuff, all the bad stuff, and maybe some of the ugly stuff with the Milwaukee Brewers. As I said earlier, and as you guys tuned into the post-game show last night, the Bucks blow out the Brooklyn Nets. They do force a Game 7 at Brooklyn Saturday night. Brewers, unfortunately, lost 4 in a row last night against Colorado. I'm not sure any fans in Milwaukee really paid attention to that Brewers game, but we'll talk a little bit about Coach Bud, a little bit about Chris Middleton. Real quick, before we do get the show started, just for you guys out there, and I know most of you guys have had purchased some stuff, and if you haven't, Brew City Lounge podcast officially has its own merchandise. Hop on over to the link posted at the top of the Facebook and Twitter, pinned at the top. Check out what they got going on over there. I would greatly appreciate it. But I am joined by a special guest, a guy that I listen to almost daily, a guy that one day is going to get his own show, who's going to be huge out there. So special guest of the show brought to you by the good folks over at One Call Technology. Give them a call at 888-585-8850 for all your cable and telecom needs. Armen Saryan from 97.3 The Game out of Milwaukee. You can go ahead and give him a follow on Twitter at Armen Saryan. Armen, thank you so much for joining me. How you doing today?
Of course, man. I'm doing great. It was, we're still riding that glow from Game 6. First of all, just thanks for having me on, Brandon. You do a great job with the Brew City Lounge podcast. You connect fans. You're it's the grassroots of fans. So I love this, man. You do a great job, and all those nice things you're saying about me, man. I thought you had the wrong guy in the podcast. I'm like, I thought he said 1 o'clock. He's got the wrong guy. This can't be me. Who's the guy who's saying all these nice things about? No, I appreciate it, man. No, it's great to be on and great to talk to you on a day like today. These are the days we dream about, right? I mean, these are the days we love doing this stuff because it's so much fun to talk about the good things, the great moments in our city, in our state's sports moments. And this was one of them last night. It was a great Game 6 win for the Bucks last night.
And real quick, before we dive into it, so if you don't know, and you probably don't, not like I told you before, but okay. I just moved back to Milwaukee. This is where I'm from. This is where I was born, where I was raised. I left at 18. I joined the Army. I just moved back in 2019.
Awesome.
And it was after the basketball season. They had lost to Toronto. It was already over.
Sure.
So I never got down to the Deer District. I've been there, but I've never watched a game down there. And then obviously 2020 came around, and COVID-19 obviously took a toll on the NBA season. So I've never been down at the Deer District. And last night, and I believe you guys were also there for Game 5. You had Steve.
Game 4.
Was it Game 4? Yeah, you guys.
Yes.
You guys were down there and you were tearing it down last night. I saw Josh getting rowdy last night.
Yeah.
How is it down there? Like, I mean, I've never been down there to watch a game. I mean,
right.
it looks insane.
It is. It's pretty nuts. I mean, obviously, it's not a normal game. A normal game in a normal season, it wouldn't always be this way. But it was nuts. It was like a festival, and it was great. Being down there. We were in Mecca on the patio, so we were kind of right adjacent to the big crowd. And I mean, it is absolutely dripping with energy, and that's what's so much fun about it. Is people are there just to gather and to enjoy. And it's funny. It's like I kept thinking last night. There are this many people outside, and it's still a sellout in the arena. And I was thinking that's like so many people. And I was thinking back to all the years as a Bucks fan that you could not get anyone to come to the games, and much less gather outside just to watch, just to be there, just to be around it. They don't have a ticket to get in. They just want to be a part of it. It's really great. It reminds me of being at Summerfest, to be honest with you, because you know how it is. You've been to Summerfest. when it's packed during the late stages on a regular Summerfest night, it's hard to, it's shoulder to shoulder, it's packed, it's that vibe, and you're there, you're people watching. That's kind of what it felt like last night. There were so many people out and about, and so many people really ready there to come together and support their Bucks, cheer on their Bucks. It's awesome, Brandon. And what's funny is, like I said, growing up in Milwaukee, growing up as a fan of this, city's teams and the state's teams, I've been to a lot of Bucks games throughout my life, and they were bad for a lot of my life. They've had some good moments.
Yeah, same.
But you know what it was like. I mean, it was a struggle to fill the Bradley Center. It was a struggle to get anyone excited about the Bucks. You used to get laughed at when you talked, even to your buddies, about liking the Bucks and actually following the team. And outside the Bradley Center, unless you went to Turner Hall, I guess, there really wasn't much going on. Like, it wasn't like people were packing bars around. They go down to 3rd or Water Street, and it's such a surreal experience to see it all built up as a deer district. Like, wow, people are congregating here, so it's really cool, man. It's really awesome experience, and I'm glad we're here to appreciate it now, as Bucks fans.
I look around and I do a post game after the Bucks playoffs games, not every game, but since they started in the playoffs,
sure,
this year, I've started talking a bit about the Milwaukee Bucks after the game, and I was talking about it last night with a guy that decided he wanted to come on, a good friend of mine, and he lives down in Tennessee, and
okay.
he's not a Bucks fan. He's a basketball fan, but they don't have maybe Memphis. He's not a Memphis fan, but he they don't really have a whole lot of basketball following out there in Tennessee, and he asked me, he goes, I've never seen an NBA arena that, like you just said, filled with fans, 20,000, maybe, a little under 20,000, and then about 5,000 outside of it watching it right where they're playing. He goes, I've never seen that in the NBA before.
Yeah.
And it got me thinking, I don't know if there is anybody out there. Maybe Toronto, when they had their run in 2019, they had like a little block party or whatever, but this is a little bit different. They built Pfizer Forum, kind of how they built formerly known as Miller Park. They kind of had this whole thing in mind, building Pfizer Forum. Like, we're going to build an arena that's going to fit 20,000 roughly, and then we're going to build a patio area with bars lined up that are going to have room for 10,000. I went to the Giannis celebration, the MVP celebration.
I remember that. Incredible,
dude. There had to have been 20,000 people there. Had to have been, and it's just, I don't know if there's another spot around the NBA.
What's funny about that is, in this state, if you think about it, Brandon, the legacy of those who built and founded teams, professional sports, and built these buildings, they were always based on a hope and belief and a faith in the future.
Mm-hmm.
Green Bay Packers, Lambeau Field, we know about the history, of course, of the Packers, how Lambeau was built, City Stadium, all that stuff, grassroots, just the absolute grassroots, the common people starting from nothing, building it up as a hope for the future that this would become a thing. County Stadium was built before there was a Major League Baseball team in Milwaukee. The Braves hadn't come yet. It was built on a faith, a hope, and a dream. In a lot of ways, and so on and so on, a lot of ways, Fiserv was like that. In some ways, I mean, we know the Bucks were here, but it wasn't like the Bucks were the hottest ticket in town, and it wasn't like that. It was relegated third a lot in terms of interest in professional sports and fans in this market. And it wasn't because people didn't like basketball or didn't like the Bucks, as a lot of people would try and say. It's that all this market, all this city ever wanted was a winner. And you bring out a winner, and this was the same with the Brewers in the 90s. County Stadium wouldn't draw. But once you brought out a winner to Miller Park, once you brought out a winner to the Buck, to Bradley Center, and to Pfizer Forum, you see how the fans respond. You see how the people of Milwaukee respond. And there's always been that kind of faith and hope in the future that's been the foundation of building these venues, these environments. And it's all based on the faith and the belief in the people and the sports fans of Milwaukee. And you bring the winner, those fans will always come through. Yeah. And that's sort of the beautiful thing about this whole thing, is that it sounds cliche, but I can say it because I am a fan first. It's about the fans. So when I see this now, the Bucks giving their city a winner, championship contender. Whether or not they win, we don't know, but they're now a contender every year in the playoffs with Giannis. And look, let's face it, mostly because of Giannis, which is great. I mean, that's just the way it goes. Now the fans are coming out and supporting, and they're there for you, right? They're there.
Mm-hmm.
Game 5 was a devastating loss. It felt that way. You had the lead. You let it go. I said to myself, I don't know if there's going to be much hype for Game 6. Maybe it's wore off. Maybe people don't believe. They were there, packed and ready, back on their horse, ready to ride. That's what it felt like from the fans. So that's really sort of the beautiful thing about it, to me.
I'm going to be honest with you, and it's going to sound a little bit homerish because I'm a homer.
But that's okay. That's what you do. That's
what it is, man. You already know. But I've been all over the United States. I've lived in multiple different states with professional teams, obviously.
Right.
And Armen, I have never seen a fan base that is constantly in the smallest market in the Major League Baseball and National Basketball Association that has such a following like our teams do. And it sounds like I'm being, biased towards our teams, but I've lived in states where you didn't even know if the Atlanta Braves were in the playoffs. You had no idea. You didn't know. You didn't know if the Denver Broncos were any good. You didn't know. You didn't hear. Nobody cared about them. There was never a following like there is in our city, in our state. It's surreal. Like when I tell people, I was talking to a friend and I was explaining tailgating to him because he had no idea what it was. He was like, what do you guys, where he's from out in Colorado, Coors Field is built literally in downtown. And they did that so that you could walk from establishment right to the stadium.
Sure. Like a Wrigleyville or a BART.
Exactly.
Yeah,
exactly.
It makes sense.
So when you tell these people like, no, when they built Miller Park, formerly known as Miller Park, they built it so that they could have, X amount of space for the parking lot. I said, because it's a 3 hours. And if you go there 3 hours before a Brewers game, there's a line to get in before. And that's what it is. And it's like the Deer District now is turned into like, obviously Green Bay speaks for itself, but Milwaukee Bucks and the Milwaukee Brewers are kind of starting to trend. I'm not comparing them to Green Bay, but it's starting to trend to the following as closely as people follow the Green Bay Packers. It's awesome to see. I mean, when other people are texting me from out of state, I got friends all over and they're asking me like, what's the Deer District? And you got to explain it to them. And then they, so it's something different. Like I've just never seen a following like we have here in the city.
Well, we love to gather. I mean, I think we're unique in that regard. We love to gather. This is the city of festivals. We know about that. I remember going to a Brewers game in Philadelphia once. I was there for something else, and they happened to be in town. And in Philadelphia, all their arenas, all their sports venues are together. Mm-hmm. They kind of share a park. That's how they set up their sports venues. So you have, I'm blanking. Lincoln. I'm blanking on all. What's the baseball? Citizens Bank.
Citizens. Yeah, I'm thinking of PNC, but that's Pittsburgh.
Okay.
But yeah, you're right. Yeah.
So, but the point is, we go there and everyone's in the parking lot, and there's no tailgaters, and it was a very unusually eerie feeling. And I know it shouldn't be because it's like, of course they're parked here. What else are they gonna do? It's a parking lot. I'm like, if this scene was in Milwaukee right now, it'd be packed with grills, people tailgating, and we love to gather as people. That's what we do in Milwaukee. And I think we do have that unique fan base. And I think the thing is, it's hard to convince someone that from the outside because what they see is a smaller number of fans. It's like, well, there's not that many Bucks fans outside of Milwaukee. Nobody cares about your little team like nationally, and that's probably true. But it's not so the reason it's hard for people to believe it's because they see it as a small number of fans, like a totality. But it's not about that, right? It's about the amount of people in this market that will all support that team. Even though Milwaukee's the smallest market in one of the smallest markets in baseball, they do very well in attendance. Mm-hmm. Even though, we don't have a big market in basketball and there aren't Bucks fans nationally, so to speak, we have this committed fan base still that comes here. It's like it's the collective effort of the community that we all take. And you're right. That's unique. I mean, there's not it's not like that in a bigger market per se, where everybody's a fan of their team. It might be more transient. That's not Milwaukee. That's not Wisconsin. We're very provincial and we have a lot of civic pride. And we will support those teams. So it's a great thing.
speaking about supporting those teams, we'll get into Game 6 here in a minute. And I want to get your thoughts, obviously. Before the game, like 3 hours before the game, news kind of came down that the head referee was a Brooklyn Nets fan.
Zach Zarba. Yeah.
Yeah. So what were your thoughts about that initially?
Well, I sort of rolled my eyes a little bit because, all right, when I think of NBA refs, I think of Mark Davis and Scott Foster, and I'm like, oh, gosh. I'm like, oh, Zach Zarba. And I didn't realize he was from Brooklyn until it started coming out. And I try and tell myself not to believe in these things like, oh, come on. Like, these are professionals or NBA officials. Like, don't make it about the refs. Like, this team's got to play good or play bad. But it does sit in the back of your mind. Like, if I grew up in Milwaukee and I was a ref, I'd be hard to. No, I don't really know. I saw that and I sort of laughed. Although the thing about Zach Zarba being from Brooklyn, and someone brought up this point to me on Twitter, and I think it's true. If he grew up in Brooklyn, he's more likely a Knicks fan because no one was a Nets fan back in the 80s and 90s. And so I'm like, all right, but I'm a little worried now to see who we'll get for Game 7.
Well,
Mark Davis loves the drama. I hope it's not Mark Davis.
Kane Fitzgerald, who was also in that group last night, he was from New Jersey. So people were like, okay, like, come on, you got a guy from Brooklyn. His profile picture is him in front of the Barclays Center,
which is weird to me. If I know I'm an NBA official, I'm probably not doing that, but I try not to cast aspersions on their professionalism and stuff like that. And I didn't think that – I think early on it was a Brooklyn whistle, but I didn't think it was that bad as the game went on. Middleton got a couple nice 4-point plays, so I can't complain too much about the officiating, I suppose, so far, last night especially.
And I said it after the postgame as well. I agree with you. I said there's always going to be calls that, could go either way or maybe should go one way or the other, but I thought it was a pretty good there's a couple NBA officials can't help that James Harden just flops around the court. Like, I mean, it's hard for them to, we can see it on TV, but when they're in action, I suppose it's a little bit different. But
he's a very difficult player to officiate, no doubt.
Extremely,
because even though it looks unorthodox and it doesn't look pretty, he basically manipulated his style of play to fit the rules to get. I mean, he plays like a bumper boat. That's what I always say. And you do what you can. They have to call it by the rules. So,
and I tweeted out a video on my Twitter account. When he shot that three, he fell to the ground before Giannis could even get there to defend. And I'm so glad, number one, that they didn't call it and they could kind of see it. And I believe I can't remember who was on the call last night. If it was Mike Green,
Green, I think.
Green, yeah. I'm not sure if it was him or not, but he was like, "Oh, James Harden fell before the defender even got there."
He called it out, yeah. He did.
So, but jumping into Game 6, obviously the Bucks win big time, 104-89. What were your thoughts on that game?
Well, what was great about the game last night is, they took the energy from the crowd early and they started off well on both ends. We talk about Brook not that much in this series, and I think his role is kind of changes as the opponent changes. But he had some nice buckets early on in that game that I think got them going. Giannis was getting to the rim early, but let's be honest. I mean, the difference for me was Middleton. I think Giannis is a great player and does his thing consistently nearly every game. But I feel like as Middleton goes, so go the Bucks. When the Bucks are on the road, Middleton struggles a little bit more than when he's at home. But when he's at home and he plays really well, the Bucks are hard to beat because you have Giannis doing his thing, which he did 30 and 15 as consistent as, death and taxes, whatever they want to call it.
Armen, you wouldn't know on Twitter. You would have.
You wouldn't. He's Robin. Didn't I see Kendrick Perkins call
that?
Was
Robin? This morning. Yeah, that was this morning. So
disrespectful. Anyway, but that's just the way it is. Giannis gets disrespected. Even though when Middleton has a big game, it's so ordinary. But if Durant did that, people would be fawning all over him. That's just the way it is. But Middleton playing like that can be the X factor for the Bucks. And the important thing about Middleton is he's the one guy that can get you an ISO bucket on a shot when you really need to stem the tide. He did that time and again last night. So we'll just see if his game travels. If he has another game like that in Brooklyn, I love the Bucks' chances. But early on, that's what I love. The Bucks were aggressive, getting to the rack. Giannis played every possession almost as well as you can play. I mean, Giannis made the right decisions throughout. He didn't take any threes last night. I would have been mad about a couple, but he didn't take any threes.
Mm-hmm.
He took it to the rack when he had his chances, especially in transition. When he didn't, he created open threes. Be honest with you, Brandon, I think they could have won by a lot more. The Bucks had a lot of good looks from three that they missed. I think they shot 21% last night from three.
Yeah,
they could have won by 25 points. I mean, there was a lot of good looks from three the Bucks missed. So they just had the offense going early. It was beautiful to watch.
There's a couple things that stuck out to me in that game. And the biggest thing is Giannis, Chris Middleton, and Drew Holiday. The Milwaukee Bucks big three. Chris Middleton finishes with 38 points. Giannis finishes with 30. Drew Holiday finishes with 21. They combined for 89. The Brooklyn Nets scored 89 points.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's something that really stuck out to me as, hey, if your big three is going to outplay or play on par with where Brooklyn is, you got a pretty good chance in almost any game.
Oh, absolutely. And the thing is, we focus so much on stars in the NBA and what stars do because ultimately they get the credit, they get the blame. They're seen as the one that really eventually carries the team over the top. But so often in these games, it's the role players. You saw that in Brooklyn. The role players stepped up big. They weren't there. Those are often the ones that can help you win or lose a game. So you talked about, you combine Harden and Durant and all those guys, unless they have other guys step up and a Jeff Green or, Joe Harris has been AWOL so far. Hopefully that continues.
Yeah. If
you don't have these guys step up, I think the Bucks are well equipped to win because the Bucks can score that many ways. And when you have Chris going like last night, Drew, I didn't think played a great game.
I didn't either.
Drew, yeah. He took now a lot of. I'm okay with a lot of the threes he takes in comparison to the ones like Pat Connaughton takes, for instance, because Drew is primary handler of the ball. He's the one at the end of the shot clock might have to take a shot. But he missed a lot of very open, makeable threes. I thought he could have played better. So that being said, I think there's potential there for improvement. Yeah, I mean, when the Bucks have their big three working, you hear so much focus on the Brooklyn Stars, but they can get it done too.
And I said the same thing last night. I was sitting here and I was looking at the box score. I was like, well, Drew Holiday, he shot just under 40% from the field. He was obviously 1 from 10 from the 3-point range, just getting a lot of criticism. I said, but he finished with 28 points and finished with a plus or minus a plus 15. What kind of blew my mind, I was doing the post-game show last night. And I was obviously checking the box score as I was talking. Out of the whole game, there's two things that stuck out to me. It was Kevin Durant, PJ Tucker. Kevin Durant finished with a game worst, minus 25. PJ Tucker finished
30,
with a game best, plus 30.
Plus 30, yeah.
For a guy that made one basket and had a couple rebounds, I mean, it tells you what that dude means to that team defensively.
Absolutely, and it just shows you that we can't, with the naked eye, see the impact guys have on winning and losing sometimes. PJ Tucker made one shot last night. He might not score for you at all, but he has an impact. He has an impact on his teammates. He has an impact defensively. And he does a lot of things on the floor to help you win. So I love that stat. Yeah, he was plus 30 last night. I was very impressed by that. Tucker did well. The Bucks did their thing. They need to. The challenge for them is to take this on the road now and try and do it for 48 minutes. We saw their chance in Game 5. They couldn't complete it. They couldn't finish it. They got stagnant in the second. But that stuck out to me as well. And Drew Holiday, for what he did, the struggles he had last night, 1 for 10 from 3. Thought a few of those he usually makes. They were good looks. He's got to make a couple more. Some were ill-advised. What he did do well was repeatedly he was able to take it to the basket and score. And that's really important because you obviously, when you can penetrate the defense, it can open up other things. So when the Bucks needed buckets, he was still there to get some, a couple mid-ranges. He was mostly under control with the ball, and he was able to drive and get baskets when they needed to. So it wasn't all bad for him last night. I just thought there were some shots he normally makes that I'm sure he'd like to have back. You expect him to make more than 1 out of 10 on most nights from distance, especially the looks he had. They were pretty good looks.
Yeah, they were. A lot of them were almost wide open. The thing with Drew Holiday that kind of, I don't want to say makes me mad. I love Drew Holiday. I've been huge on him all year.
Sure.
If there's Joe Harris, James Harden, Mike James, he can take any of those guys to the hole. I mean, there's nobody. I mean, there's none of them are going to slow him down.
And he's a crafty finisher. It's not that he can. So you're right. I mean, take advantage of that, right?
Yeah, I think, and I said it. We'll get to your keys to winning Game 7. I think we're going to see a big game out of Drew Holiday, and it's going to kind of put his stamp on that offseason, that acquisition, obviously, of the Bucks going out and acquiring him for multiple draft picks. Real quick around players that made an impact. A player that's not making an impact, and I don't even know if it's his fault. I don't know what's going on, but Bobby Portis, I don't know. Maybe Ted has some inside info. Do you know anything about Bobby Portis?
I know everyone's kind of wondering, like, what's up with Bobby and why hasn't he played? He didn't even get in with the JV guys, which is interesting.
That's what threw me off, because at the end of the game, I was like, okay, he's not in here now. Like, there's something going on.
Well, there's a couple ways to look at it. I did talking to Jim Ozarski. He says he doesn't think, just from what he said, that there's anything besides just the rotations that Bud's going with right now, just comfortable with this group. And maybe Bobby is the guy that might get a few minutes at some point in Game 7. You never know when you're going to need a guy. But, yeah, all of a sudden he's not in the rotation. I don't really know. It's funny because for how long the Bucks fans have been screaming to Bud, please tighten up the rotation. And now it's like, is it too tight? Bobby's been a big part of this team, but when you think about it, when the Bucks, I think part of it's the rotations, that what they're trying to do, because if you notice, the Bucks a couple times went small, put Giannis at the 5. Mm-hmm. So in those moments, basically Giannis is the 5 and PJ Tucker is your other big. So Bobby Portis is what? He's the backup center. So if you're not going with the center in those moments, there's not really a spot for him. And what PJ Tucker can do, and he's a defensive guy. Even Thanasis, to some extent, is just a defensive energy guy. Bobby's a different kind of guy. He's Bobby Buckets, right? Bobby Portis is more of an offensive guy. So if there's a point where the Bucks need a little offense, maybe that's his role. Maybe it's different. I'd be surprised if he's in the doghouse. We haven't heard anything about injury.
I can't imagine, yeah.
But I just think that the role in the situation has to be right for him right now. And I don't know. I think we're at the point where Bud is just going to roll with what works, because I think he knows he's got to. So maybe if the Bucks were struggling at some point last night with what they were doing up front, they would have changed it up and gone with Bobby. But I expect him to be in there as well. Now, the thing about him not going in at the end, too, that might be, well, those guys, it's the JV group or whatever.
Right.
Maybe Bud says, I'm going to need Bobby at one point. He's not part of that group. Bobby's still part of the rotation. I'm not putting him in with that. There's no reason to put him in with that group. I can see it both ways. So I know we expected to see it. But if what the Bucks are doing right now keeps working, then I'm fine with it too. So,
yeah, you can't really complain. And I think it's possible that PJ Tucker's probably taken a lot of what his minutes would have been. And you're not going to want to take out PJ Tucker. And obviously Giannis and Brook defensively are there for a reason. Another guy I wanted to talk to you about and get your thoughts on is a guy that consistently gets, for whatever reason, more criticism than anybody in probably this state. Middleton constantly gets talked about. And when he has good games, you don't hear anything about him. When he has bad games, you hear everything about him.
Yeah.
Last night he seemed to answer, the Nets go on a 7-0 run. Chris Middleton hits a 17-footer. Nets go on a 10-0 run. Chris Middleton gets a 4-point play. He just seemed to answer everything and be the answer offensively for the Milwaukee Bucks. What were your thoughts on Chris Middleton? Not only just last night, but so far in these playoffs.
He's been huge. He's been a monster at home, and it was a monster last night. And he's a really good player. The Bucks need him. I always scratch my head when I see so much. He's a lightning rod for Bucks fans. We know that. It's always going to be like that. And is it the contract? I don't know. My dad asked me, why do people don't like Middleton? I try to explain it to him. Is it the contract? Is what it is? He's not a perfect player, and he doesn't play well every night. He's had a couple clunkers this series, but that's what happens with teams. That's what happens with players. And you have to appreciate him for what he is and not for what he is not. I think that's a big part of it. And you can't think of you can't judge him by, he made this. The Bucks had to sign him to that contract. If you know how the free agency and the cap works, unless you didn't want him on your team, and you need a guy like that in your team if you want to contend, you need him on your team. So I don't understand why. And it's like you don't when he has a big game like last night, you don't hear about it. But if he has a bad game, I don't know. There's a pathology with Middleton that I don't understand sometimes, and I don't think you can doubt though that he's the type of player you want on your team. I mean, it's like, what were you gonna do? Let him walk? What are you talking about? This guy's a walking bucket in some nights. He's 40, 50, 90. You need as many good players as you can. Why would I let him walk? Who cares if you think it's not? that's just the way the salary cap works. If you think you overpaid him now, for a while, I think people would compare him to Brogdon so much, but his numbers have been better than Brogdon in that same usage. So would you like to have everybody? We'd all love to have a lot of great players, but if you're in Milwaukee, you're in a small market, it's hard to get good players. I mean, Middleton blossomed into a flower from an afterthought in the Brandon Jennings trade. He wasn't supposed to be that good. We hit it with Giannis. I mean, you need to keep these type of players. You need to lead on these type of players and grow with these type of guys. So I love it when Middleton plays well. I love having him on the team. Do I wish he was more consistent? Sure, we all do. I was frustrated in game 2 when I know his importance to this team, and that's maybe the frustration for me sometimes. It's like, man, if Middleton had a big game tonight, I know the Bucks would win. It's the same in game 7, going into game 7. If Chris's game can travel one game here and has another game like that last night, the Bucks aren't going to lose. If he can do what he did, his issue has been he's much better player at home, but Chris does stuff no one else on this team can do in a lot of ways. He can shoot, he can score in ways nobody else does. And you saw it last night, the Bucks needed that. He stemmed tide at important moments. So I agree, he quieted the haters, but if he misses his first shot in game 7, they'll be back out. You know how it is in Bucks Twitter. So.
The thing with Chris Middleton, and I've defended him on multiple occasions. I hear the home and road splits. I'm like, well, not everybody plays as good as they do at home, versus the road. I mean, yeah. Kevin Durant didn't have 50 points last night, from what I'm checking. So,
right.
Obviously he gets a pass because of who he is. But what I like about Chris Middleton that I think a lot of people seem to forget, defensively, he's tough. He's not PJ Tucker.
Good point.
He's not Giannis. He's not, Brook Lopez. He's not, but he's long and he's tough. He's matched up with Kevin Durant on a number of occasions, and he's done pretty darn good. I'm a Chris Middleton. I'm a fan of all of them, but
right.
I don't understand the hate either. It's everybody talks about the money. I'm like, if you really look into it and who's getting paid in the NBA, Chris Middleton is at where I think he probably should be.
I mean, you're a team. You're going to field a team. You're going to try and win, so you're going to pay somebody, right?
You're going to have to. Yeah.
So let me know who out there you think is better. Now you might say Brogdon, but let me know who out there you think is better to get that money that the Bucks can get. I mean, this is Milwaukee. We spent 20 minutes just now talking about how much we love it, but NBA stars aren't waltzing into Milwaukee trying to bring the door down and play. That's just the way it is. So I don't know. We all wish he was more consistent, but let me ask you, what if Durant did what he did last night? He'd be the biggest story on every sports show in America. So it is what it is.
And that's just the territory with being a Milwaukee fan. And we already know, because the only time, I saw Joel Embiid miss 2 clutch free throws, not score in the fourth quarter from the 7-minute mark on till they blew that lead. And I didn't see nothing out of, the major media markets, talking about him. But if Giannis airballs a free throw, or if Giannis misses a 3-pointer, it's like breaking news. It's like people have never seen a guy miss a shot before. Kevin Durant had an air ball last night.
That's a great point. And Embiid. I didn't see anyone call him a Robin this morning. That's weird.
Exactly.
I mean, the MVP of the league, Jokic, got swept in the second round.
And then got booted out. Even though
what I mean? Well, yeah.
That flagrant was kind of whatever.
It just seems like for some reason or other, Giannis takes the brunt of that disrespect more than others. Maybe it's just our perspective, and I recognize that we're watching closely what's going on with our team and our guys, but sometimes it just feels that way. I don't know.
Yeah, it really does. And we'll put our stamp on Chris Middleton. 70% from the field last night, 63% from 3-point range.
Correct.
Like
he was incredible.
Yeah, like you said, and a couple 4-point plays, a couple fouls beyond the 3-point mark. He's an absolute phenomenal free throw shooter at 92% last night. Giannis shot 60% last night. I'll take that.
I'll take it. Not only that, he looked great in the fourth.
He did.
His misses were early, but in the fourth quarter, he was swishing them.
Yeah,
and that was great to see. So, Giannis's free throw shooting is so weird. Was talking about it last night with Zaben. I was like, Zabe, I bet you wouldn't believe his career free throw shooting numbers are much better than you realize. They're about 70%, and which most people say, okay, that's all right. I was like, 1 year he was 76%. Yep. I'm like, he's not a bad free throw shooter, but he gets in bad ruts and bad streaks. But in the middle of winter sometimes he'll hit like 21 out of 24. Like he'll go on these runs. So we know it's in him to get into these good free throw runs. And for some reason or another, I think personally, what it is a lot is he'll spend more energy in the playoffs, and he'll shoot more. He'll shoot tired more, and that's what brings his average down in the playoffs. But he was in that groove at the end, so that was like, all right, let's get it going here. Maybe he can take that into Game 7.
And I saw a lot of people out there talking about some Bucks fans, some weren't Bucks fans, about his free throw routine and how long it takes. Look, guys, anybody that's out there that's listening to Bucks fans, I don't care how he shoots free throws. I don't care if it takes him 2 hours. The guy does everything else on the court pretty darn good. I mean, he's one of 3 players to win the Defensive Player of the Year and the MVP award. For people that claim that he has no bag, unquote, he's won 2 MVPs in a league full of LeBron James, James Harden, Kyrie Irving, Kevin Durant. I mean, for a guy that doesn't have a bag, I mean, if you're getting on him about his free throw shooting in his routine, then obviously, if I'm a Bucks fan, if I'm Giannis, you're doing pretty darn good, because if that's all they're talking about, I'll take that.
Yeah, it's crazy, isn't it? And, no bag. All he does is run and jump. Remember Harden said that? He's not the only big guy that's ever played in the league. If it's that easy, how come everyone else doesn't do it? Okay? No, he's a physical specimen. Sure, we know that. But he also has some skills as a player. And he had a couple nice 15-footers last night that were big. Yeah, no, come on, man. No bag. I totally agree. Looking
ahead, we're going to go ahead and jump over to Game 7 Saturday night. I believe it's at 7:30 tip. Now, Marcus Johnson was out tweeting this morning, talking about the importance of what a Game 7 can mean for a legacy, for a career going forward. The Milwaukee Bucks have never won a Game 7, and I didn't know that in the franchise history.
On the road, right?
Was it on the road? Okay, yeah, never won a Game 7.
I think 2 for 8 overall, and
okay,
never on the road they've won one.
So never. You're going up against arguably the best scorer maybe ever, and Kevin Durant, a guy that's just going to always get his buckets. Going into Game 7, straight up, Armen, can the Milwaukee Bucks win Game 7?
Yeah, so let's just face the reality of the situation. Game 7 on the road, especially in a series like this, has been dominated by the home team. The chances are not good. I mean, it's an uphill battle to win these games, but it's not something that can't be done. It's not impossible. The Bucks, a lot of us feel, should have won Game 5 on the road. Mm-hmm. If the Bucks play well, they execute and maintain for 48 minutes, and if Durant and Green don't have their career games, they could win the game. Now, those things are part of the game too. They could happen. I mean, I'm not totally a fan of everyone saying, well, yeah, but, Durant's not going to do that every night, and Green. Yeah, but that's sports. I mean, some nights someone else steps up, but it's an uphill battle. I think expect them to win a Game 7 on the road, especially against a team like that. You can't expect it to happen because the home team should win a lot of the time, but the Bucks do have a real shot at doing it. And it might, just because it's not likely to happen doesn't mean it can't. It's sort of like, you play poker, you play cards. You might be a 60-40 or a 70-30 to lose a hand, but if you're a Texas Hold'em player, run the cards and we'll see what happens.
Exactly.
They're going to run the cards one time here, but all it takes is one time to get that bad beat. So that's kind of the way I look at this. I think the Bucks can do it if they play well, obviously, and that's easy to say. Mm-hmm. But if a couple factors are in their favor, I think if they can continue to hold down the role players, the Nets, and not let one of those guys go off at home, as long as Harden, and Harden's getting a little healthier, you saw him play better last night, doesn't completely go off and get a lot healthier in the next 48 hours, because if he gets completely hot, he's trouble. We know what Durant can do, but the Bucks have their guys too. It's just a matter of them being able to step up in big situations. And I really think if Chris's game can travel and he can have a great Game 7, I think the Bucks have a great chance to win this game. The way I look at it is this: the Bucks were formed in 1968. It's been 53 years. They've never won a Game 7 on the road. It's got to happen once in 50 years. Can we get one in a half century?
You're getting me too excited right now.
It's got to happen once. For things that never happen, Brandon, I think of this a lot. That's true of everything until it happens for the first time.
That's true.
So you never know. And while I wouldn't say it's likely, I think the Bucks have a shot at this, and it could happen.
Well, let's get to one comment here. Arlen, he's over on YouTube. If the Bucks keep the ball moving, Giannis sets screens and keeps up the good shot selection and doesn't allow them to bait him into bad shots, Bucks should come out as winners. Arlen, shout out to you. Thank you again for tuning in. I agree with him. There's two things that stick out to me with Game 7, and it's going to sound crazy when I say this. I think Game 5 was a good loss, and I don't really necessarily talk about losses as being good because most of the times they're probably not.
Yeah.
Game 1 and Game 2, you got blown out, especially Game 2 in Brooklyn. Game 5, you go home and you win Game 3 and 4, you even up the series. Game 5 showed you something, and I think it may have showed the Bucks something as well. Look, they can win in Brooklyn. They were winning 98% of that game. They had a 17-point lead at one point. I think confidence-wise, they know, first off, nobody's a real true Brooklyn fan, okay? Like, that crowd isn't going to necessarily be much of a factor as it is at the Pfizer, or really probably anywhere.
No, I mean, hey, listen, no, those Brooklyn fans that got their Kyrie jerseys for, 3 weeks, I really felt bad when he went down.
Yeah.
No, New Jersey's got a big fan base. Persephone, Secaucus, all those jerseys. No, you're right, man.
So I think going into Game 5 when they should have won, I think it showed that the Bucks, like, okay, mentally it was good. Like, hey, we can come in here, we can play our game in here, we can shoot the ball well here, and we can go up big here, and we can win here. Look, it took the greatest game from Kevin Durant in his career.
Right.
To win that game, and it came down to the last seconds. So I think it's a positive outlook for looking back on Game 5 as the Milwaukee Bucks go into play in Brooklyn, thinking, okay, like, hey, we've done it before. We were right there before. And keep in mind, everybody is really, forgetting, everybody's like, oh my God, they don't have Kyrie Irving. Neither does Giannis. Okay. So Brooklyn is supposed to be here. Brooklyn probably was supposed to win the series. If you ask anybody with a national badge, is probably supposed to have won the series in 4 or 5 games.
Oh, they were up 2-0. They won by 50.
It was over. Yeah, it was over.
Or eulogizing the Bucks. I mean, oh, absolutely. And we're here in Game 7.
So all the series, all the pressure, whether anybody believes in pressure, I believe it exists, especially in professional sports.
Sure.
All the pressure is on Brooklyn. They're supposed to win. They have the better team. They have the better players. They have the better role players. They have the home court advantage. They supposedly have a better coach, even though I'm still confused on what Steve Nash does great, but they're supposed to win. So as a Milwaukee Bucks fan, if I'm a player and they're, on their way to Brooklyn as we speak, look, go in and play your game. Like, there's no pressure. If you lose, you were supposed to lose, not that that's an excuse, not that it's making anybody feel better.
But I totally get your point. I mean, especially being up 2-0 and after getting a win like that, you're not supposed to be in a Game 7. So Brooklyn might.
Did we lose you? And we may have lost Armen, I think. We'll get him back on here shortly. I don't know, having some technical difficulties. But like I was saying, Brooklyn is supposed to be here. This is the team that is better on paper. This is the team that consistently was better all year for the most part. Milwaukee Bucks and Brooklyn.
Did I lose you?
We got Armen back. So yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, the internet dropped.
No, you're fine. You're fine.
No, my point was Brooklyn being up 2-0 after blowing a team out like that. They might still win in 7, but there's no way they wanted to be here. There's no way they feel, they played with their food. Okay, you could look at it that way maybe. Mm-hmm. So I totally agree. The pressure should be on Brooklyn. You can go in there with that nothing to lose attitude for the Bucks. Not that you don't want to win, not that you don't feel responsibility for the moment, but you could. Yeah, I think at home the pressure is on Brooklyn. People expect them to win.
And if you don't think, and this is my own perspective on it, if you don't think Kevin Durant, Blake Griffin, maybe James Harden, he didn't play in Game 3, but if you don't think that they're looking back at Game 3 as that was the one. Had multiple chances to win that game. Bucks squeak out a win 86-83, an ugly game from everybody. If I'm Brooklyn, I'm looking at Game 3, and maybe they're not, but I think it's in the back of their mind, like, should have never have got to Game 7, should have probably have swept them, or 1-5. And I do believe that, you can tell me Kevin Durant's, what he is, but physically, I think PJ Tucker's wearing him down. He was exhausted last night.
Absolutely. It's going to come down to if he can do it again in Game 7, because Durant tends to get hotter at home. So you're right. In theory, they're the more banged up team. It's just when you have guys like Durant and Harden too, we don't know how healthy it is.
Right.
They always have that potential to transcend and to lift their team and to drag them across the finish line. So I guess that's what you worry about. Maybe the Bucks can have a performance like that. We'll hope for the best.
And I think what you're going to see is before the series started, right as the series was getting ready to kick off with Brooklyn, LeBron James lost in the first round. And I had Kevin Holden from CBS 58 on my show. And I said, this series to me feels like, now look, I'm not saying Giannis is better than Kevin Durant, but it's a playoff feel, a moment, a one shining moment. Shout out to the NCAA.
Yes.
Where Giannis can take that NBA crown and understand that he is one of the best players in the National Basketball Association. He came from nothing and has turned into everything for most of us. And now LeBron is out of the playoffs. He has an opportunity to I wouldn't say cement his legacy, but to beat a Kevin Durant on the road when Kevin Durant's been the best offensive player in the series by far.
Yeah.
I think number one, you're going to quiet a lot of people, but number two, I think it would help Giannis mentally and be like, look, I don't have a jumper. I can't shoot threes like Steph Curry, but I can do everything else better than anybody.
Right.
I think it's a moment for Giannis in Game 7, and I'm gonna tell you right now, if Giannis beats Brooklyn in Game 7, he's gonna overtake probably Rodgers and Yelich if he hasn't in the state as the guy.
Well, especially if they can get it done. And you're right. The thing is, it's an opportunity that's there. You work for it. You dream about it. You try and point to that to get to that moment, to the opportunity to have a chance to create those legacy-defining moments. And if he gets over this hump, it would be a big one to get over. Wouldn't guarantee him a championship. You don't just give those out.
Mm-hmm.
But it'd be the biggest hurdle to get over. And the path would be there to then have a chance to further cement the legacy by, well, trying to win the ultimate prize, which is the world championship. Because once Giannis won MVP 1 and MVP 2, those things were great. Those cement you as a great player, upper echelon, Hall of Fame, all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
From after that moment, the rest of his career, he'll be judged on, did he win a championship? That's just the reality of how we judge these players. So, yeah, if he was able to take the mantle in this Game 7, it's one of those hurdles, one of those big humps to get over along the way.
And we're going to have a little bit fun with this last topic, talking with Armen Saryan of 97.3 The Game. Follow him on Twitter at Armen Saryan. If you're paying attention on the live feed, following on the ticker, his Twitter handle's down there. If the Milwaukee Bucks, in your opinion, win this series, and they do in fact win Game 7, I'll tell you my opinion after I get yours. In your opinion, do you think they win the title?
Well, they're definitely, in my opinion, I would say definitely. I would definitely say that I would predict them to make the finals. All right, and this is the scenario I'm going to talk about. I don't think Philadelphia is good. They're a paper tiger. I've been saying that all year. I do. I think the Hawks.
Nobody's feared them. Yeah.
No, and the Bucks have handled them easily. I think the Hawks are an up and coming team, but the Bucks are better and should win. So I think they'll get to the finals if they win this series. The only hurdle I see to winning it all, the Bucks have a tough time for whatever reason at Utah.
Mm-hmm.
Now, we don't know Donovan. I'm saying, assuming Utah, let's say Utah advanced to the finals. I don't know how healthy Donovan Mitchell would be. I don't know any of those. All I know is the Bucks cannot win in Utah. I think I was 16. I mean, I was in middle school. I was listening to LFO and Matchbox 20 and like the Wallflowers the last time the Bucks won in Utah. Okay. So that would be a tough one. We know there's always a threat with Kawhi and the Clippers, and Paul George is, whatever, playoff P, pandemic P. He had a good game in Game 5. But Kawhi's the one I fear. We don't know about his health. There are obviously those questions, but the path is about as open as it gets at that point. I mean, the stage would be set. Now, like I said, they don't give out championships, but the stage would be set there. So if the Bucks did beat the Nets, I'd have to for sure say they'd go to the finals, and they'd have a really good shot to win the title. I think it's very possible that they would be the NBA champion, but they'd still have to win 8 more games, and that's hard to do. You can't take it for granted. There's no gimmies at this point in the NBA. And I guess I'll say what really scares me is Jazz on the road or a healthy Kawhi.
Mm-hmm.
I have these. I still wake up in a cold sweat because of Kawhi from 2018. I just can't help it. I still wake up. I need to go get the Maylocks. It's just what happens.
That was probably the best chance to win a championship.
I know.
Yeah.
I think it was, but I like to think. I hope we're gonna have more good chances.
Well, and I think this is, and I'm I love Giannis. I said it. This is like my third time saying it. I said it on my post game show last night. I said it to Dario. I love Giannis like I have 3 children. I said I love Giannis like one of my own children. I defend him like I would defend my own children.
You know what? I respect that. I know for some people it might sound weird, but my brother, I respect that. I totally
you gotta know. Looking at this series, and maybe I'm being a little bit dramatic. It almost feels like this is a finals matchup in the second round. Like
I know it really feels that way.
It really does. It's star-studded. There's lots of drama. Is Coach Bud gonna get fired? There's coaches being linked to Milwaukee already. Obviously Giannis grabs all kinds of headlines. The thing with the Western Conference, literally all those teams scare me, to be honest with you. Kawhi Leonard though has an ACL injury, so I don't know if that's something that's going to prohibit him. Obviously Chris Paul is out he tested positive for COVID. The Suns are really, really darn good, and they had some really epic games against the Bucks in the regular season. So really I think any of those teams in the West scare me, but I think mentally for this Milwaukee Bucks team, if they were to get over Brooklyn, being down 0-2, losing by 39 points in game 2, seeing Kevin Durant have the best game of his career, seeing Blake Griffin all of a sudden rise from the dead, going up against all kinds of stuff, all kinds of drama. I don't think they lose. I really don't. I think they absolutely, I don't want to say cruise to the NBA finals, but they're going to be like, this is everything. We've done this before.
Yeah, it's hard. I don't want to let my mind go there because you don't want to set yourself up for a fall, but everything you said I pretty much agree with. I mean, there's no flaw in your logic there. And I tend to agree. I think that, the path, like I said, is just opened up because all these teams have had whatever injury issue it is. It would be a pretty good chance for the Bucks. And I think it'd be a matter for them of focusing and finishing and executing. And they would be better, in my opinion, than those teams if they would do that. So
real quick, we got about 8 minutes left. I want your, whether you have 1 key, 2, 3, your keys to winning game 7, and then a quick prediction.
My keys to winning game 7 are a continued good defensive effort on the perimeter with Harden and with Durant, of course. PJ Tucker's going to have another good defensive game. They did a great job last night switching on the perimeter and keeping those guys in check, controlling the glass, staying in position. And my other key is Chris Middleton. I think if he has a big game, I think the Bucks will win this series. I think he's the X factor in if the Bucks win or lose, home and road. And this is always the case, keeping Giannis out of foul trouble.
Yeah.
The one thing that could really kill the Bucks is if Giannis gets in early foul trouble. So those are my keys right there. Someone's got to come up big. I mean, this is like it's winning time. And if there's anyone that can come up big that we don't expect, maybe Bryn Forbes has a game we don't expect. Maybe someone, maybe Brooke all of a sudden becomes Splash Mountain for one game. It's just one time. You're looking for one time. So,
yeah, I'm with you. I've been calling for the Bryn Forbes game the whole series.
Yeah,
one day it's coming. It's coming. I'm sticking with the Bucks in game 7. When they lost game 5, I tweeted out, I said Bucks in 7, and I'm gonna stick with that.
Love it.
Dario agreed with me. He said Bucks in 7. You got.
Oh, see, that's the only problem. If Dario says it, it's usually wrong. So my only warning would be whatever Dario said the other day, it's usually the opposite because poor Dario, he's a dingleberry. He's never right. He's never right. Just remember, Dario is the one that doesn't believe in home court, and there hasn't been a road gate team that won yet this series. So hopefully he's right. No, I'm just kidding. But Dario, I hope he's right in this case that the Bucks win game 7, but usually he's wrong.
It's going to be a game for the ages. It's going to be a game that it's going to be talked about whether it's good or bad for Giannis and his legacy going forward. He is Armen Saryan, ladies and gentlemen. Please follow him on Twitter at Armen Saryan. Armen, man, thank you
Absolutely,
so much.
man.
Thank you so much for tuning in. That'll do it for today's episode of the Brew City Lounge. Stay tuned for tomorrow's post-game show following a Bucks victory in Game 7. Do not forget, ladies and gentlemen, to subscribe to the podcast wherever you get your podcasts, Apple, Google, Spotify. You can also follow the show on Facebook and Twitter at Brew City Pod. Please throw me a follow if you want to at Wisco_Brandon. I hope you all have a great rest of your Friday afternoon. Have a great weekend. As always, go Bucks, go Brewers, and I will talk to you guys tomorrow. See you.